You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid slug you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome to the show. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, with Johnny Million. And our dear friend Philip Ittner is live in Ukraine right now, and we're always glad when he is. And he was a guest yesterday on the Tom Hartman show. If you get a chance, go back and watch/listen to that segment. He's going to hopefully be a regular on there. That's how we're playing it out. It's great. We're making impacts. We're spreading that message.
Yeah.
And so
thanks
you
to the sparklers.
That's right. Thanks to everybody.
Spreading that
message.
Thank you.
This time last week, Phil was like, "Get me on the air with somebody."
Somebody real.
Well, let's keep it up. Keep it up.
Exactly.
Hey now.
I know. I'm kidding. It's a running joke.
I never said that.
I know. I did. That's the funny part. Believe me. Don't always understand. My ego can withstand anything. So my self-deprecating humor doesn't even work. It doesn't even. Nobody buys it. So first of all, hey, how are you? Welcome. And how goes it? What's the current state of affairs?
It goes. We got a snowy day today. I'm a little under the weather. I got a rumbly, tumbly tummy, and I think I got a little minor flu with the. We had an air raid siren today. We're expecting some sort of strike soon. They normally do hit us about once every week. They've been doing a really strong attack, so everybody's kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. There's some talk within the Ukrainian military that they think that actually is part of a kind of a hybrid warfare effect, that they're actually waiting to attack so that the anxiety builds and builds and builds because everybody's expecting it. At some point we can expect it. We can expect it. So
I did hear some talk as well that that they were using the empty nukes as a way of wearing down, using up Ukrainian air defense. Worried that it might be a real one, so they'll shoot it down for sure because it's bigger and and it obviously tracks as possibly a tactical nuke and the like. So they know they'll use up their anti-aircraft and anti-missile defense stuff chasing that down because it's really dangerous. Again, we heard a similar thing about a few times about the Russians, especially this whole it's a bait and switch. They're trying to pull everybody into Kherson because they're going to level them. Remember that the whole conversation about Kherson was the Russians are pulling out because it's a trap. Everybody was Admiral Akbar about it. And then, So, your thoughts on that?
And then it turned out that really what they were doing was sneaking out under cover of night. Well, in Kherson, it turned out that really what they were doing was sneaking out under the cover of civilian buses and at night and things like that. So, I had a conversation. Look, my big event for the day was going out to a hardware store, big hardware store in the outskirts of town, like a building center, and buying myself a whole bunch of heavy plastic tarpaulin so that if my windows get blasted in, I'll be able to at least seal them for a little while and keep the heat in.
Right.
That's how we're living.
Right. And avoid glass shards, I would hope, to some degree. You can make curtains out of them temporarily, too.
I've got duct tape up on the windows, and what my intention is if we do get hit and my windows get blasted out, that I'll retreat to this room because this only has windows facing one direction. And relatively little glass. So I've sealed that up just in case the glass does shatter. It won't. The old you ever watch the old movies about the Blitz?
Yeah.
In London, where they all got the X and the tape all over that's what my windows look like in this room. The reason I'm mentioning this is because this is how we live. This is what we do. This is We make preparations for potential attacks. We've got water and food stored. We've got candles for light and heat. This is life in Ukraine right now. So this is how it is. But I went out with a friend of mine who's a fellow American, lived here for quite some time, and we were discussing this whole thing about are we going to get hit? Are we going to, is there are they preying on the anxiety? What is this thing with the nuke? And he made a very interesting point. He said, everybody thinks that the Russians are really, really, sneaky, playing on so many different levels, and they've got, well, when in effect, sometimes it isn't really. It's just out of necessity, or this is what they've got, so they just lob it at us because that's what they have close to hand. That it isn't always that there isn't always a deeper purpose or a deeper meaning. You bring up Kherson, and everybody thinking it's a trap, it's a trap, and and really what it was is they were trying to get their guys out. Under sneaky circumstances. So, yes, sometimes the Russians are incredibly crafty. Their spycraft, in particular, their intelligence operations are really, really good. But they're not. They can be, or oftentimes are, pretty bad on the battle field. So,
getting intelligence and using it,
who knows at this point? Who knows?
Two totally different things. Gathering intelligence or stealing it, and then knowing what to do with it once you have it is a completely different set of goals. And a lot of the accumulation of a lot of things that Russia has done, largely because of oil and gas, have given the money to do it, does not mean you have the brains to make an effective version of it, especially if you have to steal a bunch of it or get it through other means to pretend you made it yourself. That's what China is finding out. The interesting thing is that on Friday, the EU is still trying to work on a price cap for at $60, and they agreed on one finally, $60 a barrel, which is break-even price for Russia, by the way. And India and China are buying Russian Ural crude at $33 a barrel. Russia is just trying to keep the pipes open, essentially. That's the whole thing. They're just selling it to keep
Putin
it
is
flowing.
leading by example. Hey now.
Hey.
Keeping the pipes open.
Keeping the pipes open, right. But that's an amazing factor. Again, $60 is the break-even price for regular transport. This is with pipelines. The boats that are carrying Russian crude have to, in some cases, they have to change boats. They have to pump it from one boat to another to get it along its way. It takes 28 days to travel to some of the places in China they need to send it to. And they're selling it at half price. This is not I'm just saying it's not a good business model as such.
No.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You bring up the whole falling down the stairs and pooping his pants thing. But the other leak that came out of the Kremlin this week was
There's other news.
we're also juvenile.
We are. He deserves it.
It was apparently an internal Kremlin survey that indicated that only something like 25% of people who are politically engaged support the war, and that the vast majority of Russians, some 50% plus, are definitely let's stop the war, let's get out of there, this is no good. And so the fact that these things are coming out of the Kremlin, I'm not going to say leak because I know Johnny will giggle. Right. To me, is actually another, in and of itself, an interesting point because, thank you, that the Kremlin is leaking. And that would never have happened, with Putin in a stronger position than he's in right now. So,
right, agreed.
It's not going. It's not going well.
No, it is not. Yep, and yet, I don't think he'll ever get tired of winning. I think other people might have, but I don't think so. Now, the fascinating part for me is that the assumption on Kherson, I think, was largely based on functional governments with functional militaries going, okay, why would I be doing this? Well, why would the U.S. or the Brits or the Australians or anybody else, why would they be pulling back out of a crucial city like this if they were the second biggest military in the world? Well, obviously, it's because it's a trap, because I'm thinking like me. But if you're thinking like them, it's because they don't have the resources to do it. Their supply lines have been cut off. They've got a terrible record of carrying out the war to begin with. So the idea that Ukraine
the morale is awful.
Right. Yeah. And the interesting thing is imagine, Russian bomber pilots that are being just set up and going, okay, we're going to go on, this is going to be your route. It's not like they're not going to look down and go, we're hitting cities. How many of those guys, like the helicopter pilots, land their planes and go, I'm not doing this? And you know what I mean? Like, that's a strong possibility, along with that number that you're talking about. Some obviously won't, and they won't care, and they just go up there and do their thing. But that's got to be a factor in them thinking about it, because, what an embarrassment there. So it's going to be, again, they have to take every precaution, Ukraine does. But at the same time, the record of Russia's like, here it comes. You did it now. Here it comes. Is pretty weak.
Yeah, it is. It's. The only couple of like successes that stand out in my mind are Kherson in the very beginning of the war was taken by subterfuge, by basically paying off people and having a puppet government ready to go and moving into Kherson quickly, and then eventually Mariupol, which they had to fight, and actually was a very much a Pyrrhic victory because they lost so many people. They were bogged down in Mariupol for months. Yes, eventually they took it, and they, in essence, did create the land bridge that they want to Crimea, but at what cost, and will they be able to hold it? But generally, this war, not a lot has gone well for the Russians in this war. And they underestimated Zelensky. They underestimated a unified West with Biden at the helm. This is not going well for them by any stretch of the imagination. And I keep seeing people who are, you talk about Fuentes, and there are some other people out there talking about, it's an inevitability. No, it's not an inevitability that the Russians are going to win. As a matter of fact, more likely than not, they're going to lose badly. It's going to be massive humiliation. The Scott Ritterization of that talking point is hilarious as far as I'm concerned. Did we blow past the break again? Like, just because I'm chatting so much. Let's grab a break if we can, and then we'll come back right after this with more with Philip live in you're in Kiev currently, in his blast facility, and then I want to talk about how Russia, according to Bloomberg, has illegally harvested $1 billion worth of wheat from the occupied Donbass, stolen tens of thousands of children, and we're supposed to think that this is a reasonable cultural fight that they're having. We'll be back right after this.
Attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God! They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So the thievery that Russia is committing as a regular order of business of both grain and resources and people and washing machines and dryers, largely for the chips that they no longer have access to, by the way. On top of that, there's this story going around that Russia is using a lot of brand new right off the assembly line missiles. They have eaten their stockpiles, and they are literally burning these things as soon as they come off the line. And I'm just going to guess that, considering their history of quality control with the stuff that they've had for a while and the hurry that they're in, the steps they are skipping right now, I would not want to be one of the guys dropping a mortar into one of these tubes or loading around into a tank barrel that was just handed to me because the guy who had any brains about artillery had already been moved to the front line. If he worked at the factory and knows how that stuff goes, of course he's manning artillery in the Donbass now. He's not back at the factory making sure the stuff is up to code. And then one other thing, and then I want you to.
There's a lot of talk about that. Oh yeah, sure.
One more thing, and we're going to get some questions.
No,
too.
you go ahead.
Remind everybody. But
oh yeah,
and the Russians, are hoping that they're going to use up their Ukraine's going to use up their air defenses, but they shot down an unnamed Russian aircraft, a larger one, it seems, maybe one of the bombers that was doing, or radar planes that was doing a kind of a dry run over where their route would be, came down this week, which can't be, again, it's par for the course for the Russians right now. And they're not going to learn that lesson anytime soon. And now word is that Putin is planning on visiting the Donbass, as long as there's, paper when he gets there. So what's their talk of, like in your sort of circle there about, expectation versus push, because there's still a push going on in the Kherson region.
Well, there's still disputed territory in the Kherson region. And there's still the fight over Bakhmut. I mean, it's slowed down because of the weather slightly, but those battles are still going on. There's the potential threat of another front opening up in Belarus. Russian troops may or may not be staging out there. The Ukrainians seem to be taking it seriously enough that they're preparing for defensive territory out west in the country, but they're not. There's another thing that's happening when it comes to their missile stockpiles, and why we seem to get hit about once a week. And Zelensky said that they have intelligence that it takes them about a week to rebuild up their missile stockpile. So it's not like that they're just strategically figuring out like, oh, we're going to overwhelm their air defenses, so we'll kind of hit them in a massive onslaught, and it takes us about a week to arrange that. There's also talk that they're running out of missiles, so they have to, like you said, right off of the conveyor belt, off to the front and fire those because they literally have run out. Now, on the other side, we have information that there are NATO nation states. There's a big scandal in Germany right now about them running out of ammunition as well, because they're primarily howitzer rounds being provided to Ukraine, that they only have about 2 days worth of artillery in Germany. Russia's a little busy right now, so I don't think they're going to try and launch an attack on Germany anytime soon. But it was a scandal. It's a big scandal in Germany right now. Having said that, the industrial strength of the West far outpaces the industrial capabilities of Russia. It just does, and so there, and then there's apparently there are back channel communications going on. There's Schultz and Putin spoke directly for about 60 minutes. There's talk of Biden has floated the idea that he would talk to Putin, but only with certain preconditions. The Russians have put forward preconditions that they have towards the talk. The Russians are clearly looking for a way out of this. It's hard to look at what's happening and think that the Russians are anything but desperate to try and find a way to finish this thing without completely capitulating or falling apart or whatever.
Right. Well, the issue I would say that they have is
go ahead.
that By the way, Biden, the latest is that Biden is not ready to talk to Putin because they don't believe that they'll ever meet those standards, and you'd be kind of crazy to accept that.
Yeah.
But the issue that they have is that everybody knows that every pause Russia takes is really just so they can attack further. There's nothing that has signaled within any of it that any kind of ceasefire or momentary peace talks are for anything but giving them a 3-week head start on catching up with military rounds so they can do this again while moving caliber missiles into the Black Sea. And since we can see everything that they're doing, it doesn't, nobody's taking any of the idea that they want to speak seriously. And this goes back to like the tankies and that crowd, the Ritter crowd, all saying that, Boris Johnson made Zelensky not talk to Russia earlier this year.
Right.
And what the UK said was, the UK said was like, we're just telling you, they don't mean it. Our intelligence is telling us that it's fake. This is a head fake. And if we're not going to fall for it, and we don't expect you to. So, that lasted about 30 seconds. Where they're like, should we? No, you shouldn't. Because look at this. Look at this picture right here. Tell me they aren't moving in, and they're not gonna. It's gonna get worse. They're digging trenches while they're saying they want to have a peace talk. That's not happening. They're literally making these big concrete bunkers to roll in on trucks.
Right, they're building staging areas. They're organizing their troops in such a way that they can strike at you here, and here. It would be if you take your foot off the pedal. Was basically what Johnson told Zelensky. Was if you take your foot off the pedal, it'll only be to their advantage, and it's 100% true. Look, they can't. This war is an existential threat to both sides. Both sides know whoever wins this war, their country will be forever changed. For the Ukrainians, it is self-determination, and it is the right to have your own country and not live under the thumb of Moscow. For the Russians, it is the loss of their crown jewel in their empire and their sense of worth and their sense of self-identity as an empire. So both sides know this. And so when Putin says this is an existential threat for Russia, he's not talking about NATO territory. He's not talking about Nazis in Ukraine. He's talking about the fact that if they lose this war, they lose their primary colony. They no longer are an empire, and they define themselves by empire. They will, when they lose Ukraine, which is an inevitability, they will have to look in the mirror and they go and have to say to themselves, who are we now if we are not a great Slavic Russian empire? And it's so, sadly what it means is a lot more people are going to die here. I said in the past to you, Al, that I thought we were closer to the end of the war than to the beginning of it. I'm having to reassess that, sadly enough. And I think we are looking at a war that's going to go deep into 2023. I still hope that it won't go into 2024 because I don't think either side can sustain it. But they're going to fight like heck. The Russians are certainly over. How do you regain Mariupol? How do you want to try and take Crimea if you're Ukraine? Right. And how does that happen? If it's a shock to the system, some sort of massive offensive into Crimea, it'll freak the Russians out. So lots on the table. Yes,
it's true. And we're gonna have some questions when we come back from the chat room that Johnny will be farming for us as well. And then so we got to take.
I got a question for one of the sex bots.
Really? I think you know the answer.
You want to chat sometime.
Off the air, Johnny Million, off the air. All right, we'll be back right after this.
I work with children.
Yes, not good. Welcome back to the show. Philip Ittner is joining us. He's on Twitter for as long as it lasts at Philip Twitner. Like the 1L 2 T's, Philip Ittner, and then John. Twitler, because I can't not say Twitler.
That's a new one.
Twitter right now. But that was the running joke around the house yesterday while I was watching stuff. It's like, are you on Twitler today? and which is not not quite how you want people to describe your product, I think, in general. But and then at Johnny Million, you no longer need the one because there can be only one, and it is Johnny Million.
There can be only one.
And then we're at the Facebook page, twitch.tv/HalSparks, and of course, infotainmentwars.com. We have the documents, and but we've memorized them. And throughout, the turns of this story, as Ukraine is pushing back on this thing, and Russia's getting their funding from selling oil to India and China, and we now know that they're selling them at half the price of the price cap that the Europeans just put on it. So it could have been even lower. And there are pipelines and situations set up in Russia that will never be fixed again. And when you were talking about, and I want to get to the questions, but when you were talking about how, Russia's got to decide what kind of country they are if they're no longer an empire, they're still like the biggest country or the second biggest country by landmass on the earth. And isn't that enough? Like at a certain point, I mean, half of it's useless and is covered in permafrost 90% of the year, but that wasn't our fault. But there's something to be done with that space, right? I mean, they could corner the market on snowmen, something. But I'm curious as to why that navel gazing
and global warming, global warming. Yeah.
Right. That's why they're rooting for it. The Russians are rooting for global warming. They don't want us to change it because it raises the temperature in all those areas to 2 degrees. That'll help them out in theory. So let's grab some questions from the chat room before I filibuster because I have so much to talk about. What do we have first, Johnny?
So my first one is from Karen Webster, and she's asking if Phil can do a video inside the barbecue restaurant in the dark where there are other people are sharing food.
Yeah, I mean, I could. Sure. Mm-hmm. I'll give it a go. Mm-hmm. That's my little local restaurant.
Yeah. Now I want barbecue.
So
thanks, Johnny.
C, Done. All right. I'm out. Don C would like to know, would solar panels and solar stoves be an option for Ukrainians?
Sure, absolutely. I actually have a solar panel USB charger that I put up in my window. So people already have all sorts of different things set up for when they lose heat and power. So, but solar is absolutely in their list of things that they have going. So, get more of them in here. Get more batteries. Get more substations. Get more everything. It's all hands on deck. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess
they are doing
that
solar
actually
stuff.
parlays into Connie Kelly's question where she's asking if Philip could use solar chargers and can she send you a couple if you can?
It's very sweet. It's hard. It's going to be hard to get to me, but yeah. I mean, that's very sweet. I'm pretty sorted actually, but I'd love to set something up where we can help other Ukrainians. They're the folks who are going to, especially out in the villages and stuff. I'm in Kiev. I'm in a relatively. We're okay. We lose power, we lose heating. It's normally back pretty quickly, but it's the guys who are out there in the middle of nowhere in this very large country. Those are the ones who
they're the real heroes.
Without power for weeks. Well, they've got it hard. They've got it really. It's difficult. It's difficult for those folks. So, let me think about that one, and let's see if we can set something up where we can get supplies in for people.
So I've got a question.
Another one, Johnny?
I've got a question from Greg Edmond. Are the Gepard AAA being used by Ukraine yet?
Yeah, I mean they're getting more. They're getting more and more stuff. The Germans are actually stepping up their delivery for all sorts of stuff. I mean they're getting, at some point they will get the Patriot system apparently here. There's some talk that maybe it's already here. We just hasn't been particularly advertised. But everybody is sending stuff in. The polls are sending in all sorts of stuff, and everybody is sending material here. And right now, it's about anti-aircraft. So yeah, a whole bunch of stuff is coming here.
So, by the way, the planes that everybody's worried about for this massive attack that everyone is expecting is that they've gathered a bunch of these planes. The Tu-95, which they call the Blackjack.
Ingalls Air Force Base.
Yes, right. The MS-6 and the MS-16 are two of their other long-range bombers that they've been gathering together and parking, basically, knowing full well the world can see them. And so there is a little bit of where this reeks of similar stuff from Russia before, where these planes might not even be flight-ready, considering the situation they are with airplanes and with techs and all that kind of stuff. But they can park them out there as a way of like, don't push us any further because we're going to launch these bombers. We're going to strafe bomb all the cities. The problem they have is, I mean, I don't know how I would feel considering seeing some of the other videos of Russian airplanes taking off and crashing right after takeoff, that you'd want to get in one of these things. Again, the long-range ones that nobody was ever expecting to use, that have been mothballed for a while. It's, and then even their like long flight bombers that they have up in the air for a long time are not the kind that you would use for this kind of stuff and are really visible, really easy to track. They're like airliners. So while every precaution has to be taken, a lot of this looks like more Russian BS, just to cover the fact that they need to move some missiles into place so they can fire them from the sea. But another question from the chat.
Well,
again.
I mean, that's what the head of that's what the head of operational command in the South said. She said that she thought a lot of this was actually to put pressure on, and that an attack wasn't imminent. But boy, it still makes you nervous.
Yeah.
Sure.
Next question, Johnny. What you got?
Yeah.
Rebecca Brewer is asking if Philip needs any winter apparel. Again, this is people wanting to send you things.
Yeah, we're all your mother now.
Everybody's so sweet.
You don't get this treatment
It's
on Tom
so
Hartman,
sweet.
I'll
It's
tell you.
lovely, but I'm
Tom
okay.
Like,
I really.
Good luck to you. You're on your own.
Click.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I've got right. I think I'm pretty well stocked. I'm okay for winter clothing. I'm okay for look at the size of this power bank. It's no joke. Those folks who are listening on radio, I've got a really big power bank. That's what she said. But tons of these things.
Oh, and we're the children.
I'm getting in, hopefully. I know. I am hopefully going to be getting one of Elon Musk's Starlink systems. That'll keep me up and running even if that's my biggest concern right now is not about stuff that'll make my living conditions better. I want to continue to be effective. I need to be able to get online.
Yeah.
And I need to be able to otherwise why am I here? So I'm not worried about my personal safety. I'm not worried about my food or my heat or my electricity. I'm worried about continuing to be able to talk to you guys and tell you what's going on here so that you don't listen to some other narratives that are out there that are going to get louder, I fear, as the winter goes on, because a lot of people are just going to want to see this war end no matter what. And I think that's why Biden's, said, I'm not going to talk to Putin because his preconditions are ridiculous. And that's why Putin says he's not going to talk to Zelensky because Zelensky's preconditions are ridiculous. But we're going to hear narratives as the winter goes on and it gets more difficult and more damage is done. And if they do indeed have heavy strikes that hit and all the rest of it, the narrative that you're going to see, if people like me, if I do say so myself, are not able to get our message out, then other people who are sitting in LA or New York or whatever, and who have an axe to grind or who have a narrative that they want to present, which says, just Ukraine is the problem and Kiev is the problem, not Putin.
Right.
You're going to hear that louder and louder, and they're going to be able to do it because they're sitting in a studio in LA. They're not here on the ground in Ukraine. So I have to find a way to keep getting my message out and getting my voice out. I'm not worried about the heat, the power, or the light, or whatever. I'm worried about not being able to do what it is I intend to do, which is to keep telling the Ukrainian story. So
awesome. Well, let's take a break, and then because we've got one more segment left. No, it's good. And we'll be back with more questions. And while we're at break, follow Philip on Twitter at Philip Ittner, and you'll see the links to his YouTube page where you can watch his videos that he posts from there. And we'll be back right after this.